Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics from the State Capitol in Jeff City, the beautiful House Gallery, with the Speaker of the House, Dean Plocher. Speaker Plocher, welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be here again, Scott. Thank you for having me.
Let's just start off with an issue that I believe it was the Sunday after you got elected. You came on our show and you talked about crime in St. Louis.
Yes.
Now you have the most powerful position in the House of Representatives, and you're talking about crime in St. Louis.
Well, we are, and I think it's important to talk about crime in St. Louis, crime around our state overall. It's destabilizing to our communities. It's affecting everybody. It's shown that the crime, employees and companies are worried about employees getting to work. They're worried about their real property getting damaged, their personal property being damaged, cars getting stolen. There's a lot going on that we can hopefully address, and we've begun that process by passing House Bill 301.
The fact is, it's interesting to me, we don't like to admit it out in rural Missouri, but frankly, when we build a road in rural Missouri or there's free cheese, a lot of our friends in St. Louis pay for that. And you can't be a suburb to nowhere. It really does affect the entire state what happens in the city of St. Louis.
It really does. And it's not just the city of St. Louis, although some local politicians are refusing to prosecute criminals. It's also, there's crime in Jackson County. There's crime in Boone County. There's crime here in Jefferson City. So the goal is to really focus on what we're doing to address that crime and allow Missourians to feel safe, which I think they should. Missourians shouldn't feel insecure about their persons, about their property, about their children going to school, about going to a ball game. I mean, we deserve a lot more. I think they should expect a lot more, and we're starting that process here.
Let's talk about an issue that you've brought to the floor and moved pretty early in session, initiative petition reform.
Yes.
It does feel like there is Democrats have had a hard time getting elected at the ballot box. They've had a much easier time passing initiatives that they care about at the ballot box. Is that bill that's moving through the House and onto the Senate, is that the bill you expect to pass into session?
Well, we're hoping it is. It's been around for years. We started this process 5 years ago, I believe. That was when Clean Missouri was still out there too. Really, what we have is out-of-state interests. They haven't been successful at the ballot here, but they use our initiative petition process, constitutional initiative petition process. There's two types, and I think that needs to be articulated. This is not statutory. This is constitutional, and they're weaponizing the initiative petition process to use out-of-state moneyed, very liberal, woke interests to affect us here in Missouri. That has to stop. We need more transparency.
It feels like almost like Goldilocks, right?
Yes.
It shouldn't be too hard, but maybe now it's a little too easy. You're looking for that just right.
That's right. We want all Missouri citizens to have a voice at the box and to be informed as to what is being voted on. And I think the initiative petition process undermines Missouri citizens, and it allows out-of-state liberal interest to overtly affect us here in our state.
It feels like the way things get put on the ballot, if you live in the 8th Congressional District, Southeast Missouri, or North Missouri, you're never consulted. No one asks you to sign anything. When a bill passes, I hear a lot about equality. If this was the 1st and the 5th Congressional District that was always left out of this, there'd be a whole bunch of people ticked off.
Well, I think every Missouri vote matters. Every Missourian matters, and every Missourian should be heard. So in this, we say, I believe it says something to the extent that all congressional districts must be consulted. We don't change the signatures, but we have to bring out what is in that initiative petition to all congressional districts, to vet the bill, to create the transparency I think Missourians deserve before we change our Constitution.
I think it's become Jeff City folk legend now. Special session last fall, probably about to fall apart and everybody's go home. You bring people in, a group of them, twist arms. You come up with deals that brought the first significant tax cut in some time to Missourians. I heard in your speech you're thinking about doing more.
Well, I mean, I'm a fiscal conservative. I think my caucus stands fully on that precept that Missourians earn their money and they're in the best position to determine how that money should be spent. And with our economy growing as it is, with the excess funds that we have, I think we should, give more money back to the hardworking Missouri families so they can spend it as they see fit.
I'm just a simple hillbilly. You're Speaker of the House. But I don't think anybody gets off work on Friday, looks at that pay stub and says, I didn't send Governor Parsons enough money.
That's indeed true.
Let's talk about something that's a tricky issue. Everybody in the state says China shouldn't own farmland in Missouri, right? Everybody thinks that.
Yes.
However, it gets a little tricky. You could write a statute that could inhibit the jobs of a lot of Missourians.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of companies that we might even associate with American brands that are owned partially or wholly by foreign interest. It's a tricky piece of legislation to pass. It feels like there's a lot of public support to pass something, but boy, it feels like you could almost set the state back if you're not careful.
Well, I think the bills are moving forward. There's a lot to be debated yet, but we're very cognizant of the fact that we want responsible investment, good investment in Missouri that create good jobs, that keep Missouri on track to be the most achieving state in the country. But we also have to protect our security interest here. And when that balloon from China flew right over Whiteman Air Force Base, right over this Capitol right here, that's unacceptable. And who did that? The Chinese. So I think we have to protect our sovereignty as a state in that light too. And that's what this looks to do.
So can you, when you sit down, there's a lot of ag groups that are nervous about this. A lot of business interests are.
Sure.
Do you think the credibility you've built up is probably, I mean, I think you're definitely the leading advocate for rural Missouri in the legislature.
Well, thank you.
I think you've built that over time, over delivering. Do you think that credibility is something that lets those groups trust that if you've got a hand in this, that you're not going to do something that's going to set the state back at some point?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm proud of rural Missouri. I'm proud of what we accomplish here in this state. I'm proud of how important agriculture is to our state, as well as what our urban areas bring to our state. So, no, we're not trying to do any damage here. We're just trying to protect Missouri and protect our sovereignty as a state so that the Chinese don't get away with what they're getting away with. That balloon should have been shot down over the Aleutian Islands. Never should have gotten here. And they shouldn't be allowed to own farmland in Missouri when they act in such a devious, deceitful, evil way.
I've seen a representative from Independence, a freshman, come up with some ways to incentivize folks in the defense industry to buy from American Missouri suppliers. It almost does feel, for the first time in my lifetime, like you see things like that balloon, things like in Ukraine, you could see a legitimate, not a war like we've been accustomed to in one kind of third world country, but superpowers going to war. I mean, there's that feeling in the air.
Sadly, I mean, hopefully we can avoid that type of conflict. But I think Missourians should be aware of how evil that Communist Party is in China. It's not the Chinese people, it's the Chinese Communist Party that's the evil party here. And if you have TikTok on your phone, get rid of it. We have another bill addressing that. They're insidiously working their way into Missouri, and it has to stop.
Before you get me in trouble with my daughter, I want to ask you about last week you announced you're going to continue your career in this building. You're going to seek to run for lieutenant governor.
Well, it's an honor to serve. I thoroughly enjoy it. I mean, I love what we can do for our state. I will say that my focus, though, right now is 100% to be the best speaker I can be and to deliver for Missourians, to deliver and fight for a good conservative agenda.
So I got two questions.
Yes.
I'll start with a tough one. How did you convince Miss Rebecca to let you do this?
You know, my wife is a public servant in and of herself. She fervently believes in what we do as a family. She believes in what I do. She has a big role in everything we do. She's a great mom, great wife, so it wasn't hard to convince her.
Maybe you're just persuasive. Number two, why lieutenant governor?
It allows me to work with the Senate and the House, and I think I've built great relationships with the senators, with the House of Representatives, and with the governor's office. And going forward, it allows me to kind of bring all of those together to work towards passing legislation, which is what we have to do. We have to work together to pass a good conservative agenda.
Speaker Plocher, as session goes on, as the campaign goes, hope you come back here and join us on This Week in Missouri Politics to discuss it.
It's great to be on here. My family and I will make this decision later, but it's always great to be on your show, Scott, and
Sure.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot. We'll be right back. After the break, we're going to pitch you to our Missouri Times streaming studio here in Jeff City for a conversation with Congressman Jason Smith. We'll be right back here to this lovely house gallery after that.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
Welcome back to This Week in Missouri Politics. Not the set you're expecting to see. We're here in our Jefferson City studios. Each week, we bring you a midweek update about Missouri politics. We drink from this tide of knowledge, and we talk about all things kind of that happen in between Sundays. This week, we're broadcasting here with Congressman Jason Smith from Missouri, the new chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. Congressman, thank you for stopping by.
Thank you for having me, Scott.
10 years ago this week, you're in Van Buren, Missouri. The Republican nomination was decided to replace Congresswoman Emerson. You won that. Today, you're the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. Even that's got to at least spin your head, even, and how successes came to you in the United States Congress?
It's a blessing to serve the good people of Southeast Missouri. It's my friends and neighbors, where my family's been for 7 generations, and to just work hard and try to accomplish some big things for working class families. When I was running for this Ways and Means race, I set out a vision to the steering committee, and I told them the Republican Party is not the party that we used to be. We are the party of the working class. We're the party of small businesses. We're the party of farmers. And I used our congressional district as a reflection of exactly the values our party are, but we need to make sure that those policies are reflective of who we represent. And that is my vision to lead when it comes to tax, when it comes to trade, healthcare, Social Security, welfare reform, oversight, which is all within the Ways and Means Committee jurisdiction.
So explain to a logger and mine owner, an old boy that works an implement dealership in Dexter, how important it is that his member of Congress has this important chairmanship.
You know, it's funny. I have a lot of my good friends, loggers who are my family members, that were like, "So you're chairman of Weights and Measures? Does that mean you're going to be measuring gasoline or what?" And my friend, the governor of South Dakota, calls this committee as the Ways to Be Mean committee. But what I will tell you is that it's the only committee that is mentioned with the powers in the U.S. Constitution. It's the oldest standing committee in all of Congress. Missouri's only had one chairman ever of this committee, and it was in 1858. It was a Democrat, John Phelps, who Phelps County is named after. He served for one term, and I'm the youngest chairman of the Ways and Means Committee ever, which is kind of interesting. But what's so important is no tax increase or tax decrease can start out anywhere in Congress but through the House Ways and Means Committee. It can't even start in the Senate. It has to go through our committee. No trade policy can happen without going through our committee. Any change to Social Security cannot happen without going through us. When it comes to almost half of healthcare, it has to go through our committee. So 60% of all of the spending in Congress is authorized through the House Ways and Means Committee.
A couple quick ones. Will there be a tax increase coming through Congressman Jason Smith's committee?
I can tell people that none of Joe Biden's tax increases will ever happen in the Ways and Means Committee, which is now the People's Committee. It's not Joe Biden's committee.
A lot of Republicans talking about cutting spending, spending cuts. Well, they've said Medicare and Social Security are off the table. A lot of folks that vote for you are on Medicare and Social Security.
My mom is on Social Security and Medicare, and I love my mom. I'm not gonna let her down. And I have made it crystal clear that we are going to protect and preserve Social Security and Medicare. There will not be cuts to Social Security and Medicare. These are two very important programs for the people of Missouri and the people of this country, and it cannot be forgotten. I told the president before the State of the Union, Mr. President, there will be no cuts to Social Security and Medicare because I will not allow it to come through our committee. But it didn't stop him from saying differently at the State of the Union.
Well, sure. Let's talk about the new IRS commissioner. I guess he's got 80,000 more buddies to harass Missourians, right?
Well, the first piece of legislation that, as chairman, the first day of my chairmanship that we passed off the House floor was to pull back that $80 billion to defund the 87,000 IRS agents. That's over in the Senate. It's a little bit tougher road over in the Senate, but we are going to hold the IRS commissioner accountable. Today, I'm sending a letter to the IRS commissioner. I set up a whistleblower hotline for every one of those IRS employees so that if they feel like there's something I need to look at in the IRS, that they can let me know. So I sent a letter 3 weeks ago to the acting IRS commissioner asking that he would send that link to the whistleblower hotline to every one of his employees. I gave him until February 8th to do it. He's refused to do it.
Well, can an old boy in Farmington call it too if he sees a problem?
Anyone can.
Maybe you can tie up 12,000 of them just with your problems that you create for them.
Absolutely anyone. The Committee of Ways and Means has jurisdiction over the IRS, and it is our responsibility to have oversight over the IRS. When there's been leaks of taxpayer information, whenever we've seen targeting of the IRS when it comes to different conservative non-for-profits, that's not how the IRS should act. The people who we represent, the people in Southeast Missouri, They don't like the idea of the IRS having 87,000 new agents, and they don't like the bank snooping provisions where they're going to look at $600 inflows and outflows of your bank accounts. Plus, they're going to look at your Venmos and PayPals. That ain't happening.
Let's talk a little closer to home here. There was a big story broke about some things happening at WashU. They set up a transgender center, and a whistleblower from there brought out a lot of very disturbing things. A lot of the federal delegation has spoke out about it. I mean, how's that concern you? Because a lot of the money that you'll be bringing home to Missouri, frankly, goes to WashU for a lot of really good reasons, but maybe not all good reasons.
It's extremely disturbing. My team immediately was working with Senator Hawley, and we reached out directly to BJC and the Children's Hospital to ask them questions. We're waiting for answers. They're supposed to be giving them to them. The Ways and Means Committee has jurisdiction over all non-for-profit hospitals. BJC and Children's is a non-for-profit hospital. Mm-hmm. So it falls within our jurisdiction, and it is my responsibility to make sure that they're operating appropriately.
Some folks have a charter school. I mean, would you send your kid to a school linked up with folks doing these terrible things to kids?
It's very, very disturbing and unfortunate. And that whistleblower, if anyone's read it, it's quite interesting. And it's disturbing what she encountered.
Let's talk a little bit closer back to Salem or West Butler County, rural broadband. Is there anything more important to the growth of the 8th District, or maybe all rural Missouri, than rural broadband?
Infrastructure, and it goes around rural broadband. It's the new rural electrification of our time and our generation. I criticize my colleagues in Washington, D.C. whenever they're like, let's get 5G. I'm like, we just need a G, so you can drive, whether it's to Salem to Poplar Bluff, and we're starting to get more Gs, which is good, but we got a long ways to go. But it's extremely important. These companies need to know they can't overlook the heart of America, the heart of Missouri, and that's places just like the 8th Congressional District. That's why I'm doing field hearings. I'm doing field hearings on our Ways and Means Committee. The very first hearing we had was in Petersburg, West Virginia, and it was at a lumber yard to hear the issues. And my team first came back whenever we found the location of Petersburg, and they're like, we got an issue, Congressman. They don't have Wi-Fi. I was like, that's perfect. That's what everyone who I represent, they have to deal with. That's what real Americans, no kidding.
They can understand what it's like, yeah.
And so our next hearing, we're actually going to have next month, in Oklahoma City. So we're going to the heart of real America in different places.
Space age technology that people think exists, but they're not sure because they can't do it. Well, Congressman, thank you so much for coming in. Congratulations on the success. We look forward to seeing you, seeing the success and what it means for Missouri going forward.
Thank you, sir.
We'll be right back from the state capitol after this.
All throughout Missouri, businesses are struggling to find workers. Childcare challenges are a big reason why. Our kids are losing out too. Through high-impact early childhood investments, we can support the workforce of today and better prepare our workforce of tomorrow. Empower families with the resources they need to succeed. Reduce crime and avoid costly interventions, saving taxpayers money. Together, we can make Missouri the best place to work, raise a family, and be a kid.
Data captured by our state-of-the-art monitors helps us pinpoint the timing and location of severe weather more accurately and respond to trouble more quickly. Ameren, Missouri's investment in smart technologies like this is one way we're improving reliability and restoring power faster than ever. Responding to trouble before trouble hits. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back to the House Gallery. You just saw our streaming studio here in Jeff City. Once a week, we do This Week in Missouri Politics, midweek update. A drink from the side of knowledge, talk a little politics. Sometimes we have a guest like Congressman Smith. Hope you'll check it out on our social media streams all throughout the week. But now into our opinion maker panel. Representative Travis Smith, good Southern Missouri man. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And Representative Bridget Walsh, thank you so much for stopping in with us.
Thanks, glad to be here.
Beautiful gallery. Thanks for the hospitality.
Anytime.
Travis, let's jump in though. It's kind of a heavy week started this week. The allegations about Washington University and some of the things that have been happening and some of their intergender programs hit. And I tell you, I've heard from obviously Republicans are outraged, but I've even heard from some folks in the LGBT community that say Their concerns, some protocols, some basic protocols weren't followed. I tend to think there's going to be more come out about this. What's going to happen?
I don't know exactly now where we're going to stand with it, but what it was crazy to hear some of those things, you know, from where I'm from, conservative Missouri and stuff, that is not something I even knew about before I came up here. And so to hear these allegations about what's going on with kids, it's really disturbing. And one of the things we heard during the hearings was we don't know what the long-term effects are going to be on some of these kids. And I just say, if you really want to know, watch Yellowstone. Beth, everyone wonders why she's so bitter and mean. You find out in episode 3, she was sterilized as a child.
Well, Representative, to me, I think there's nobody that is completely understanding of what a person goes through with something like that.
Correct.
But I do think, you know, there's a lot of folks that want to make sure. I've seen a lot of political points scored off the trans community.
Sure.
But I've even heard folks in the trans community say, "No, wait a minute. There are some scientifically accepted practices." And from what this whistleblower said, those weren't even being followed.
You know, I'm glad that a whistleblower came forward. I'm not a doctor. I haven't seen all the investigation. I'm glad that WashU and the medical community is taking this seriously and that there will be an investigation. However, I do want to make sure that this isn't an attack on the entire trans community, that we're just doing what we can to make sure that everyone is doing it correctly and safely. However, I am alarmed and concerned about the way that especially the trans community has been treated in this building. I don't see a lot of respect for our fellow Missourians. I don't feel that their voices have been heard in quite the manner that they should. I know there are families that have been coming up pretty much every week since we've been in session, fighting for their children. And one of the things that concerns me is, like you said, I'm not a trans person. I don't understand it. But you know what?
Well, I have a lot of empathy for people that are going through that.
Yeah, and I don't understand it. But I think what should concern every true American, every true patriot, is we don't make laws for those people, for others. We don't make one set of laws for this group and another set of laws for this group. That's the most un-American thing I've ever heard. And I don't like to see, I mean, we've tried separate but equal in this country. We had it at one point, and it didn't work, and we know that. And so the fact that we're trying to bring that back, no matter how, oh, it's only sports now, it's only bathrooms now, you can easily see how that can spread. And the minute we start making decisions of, we treat these people differently, and certain laws only apply to some people, I mean, that's a slippery slope, and that's really concerns me.
A lot of pro-life activists come to the Capitol, though. They came to the Capitol while Democrats had the majority. And for the most part, I think they were heard, they just weren't agreed with.
Right.
I mean, I think being heard is different than being agreed with.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'd venture to say, if you and I went to a bar on Gravois somewhere in your district, Senator Beck's district, I reckon we'd find a lot of folks that, even Democrats, that agree with the Republicans on saying, you know, the sports are different. You can't transition into the sport no matter what else is going on. I'm not sure the public isn't on the side of seeing something done.
Well, I think, as you mentioned, this is, I mean, there's a lot of political points being scored here. And so it's interesting that we have had so many bills filed on so many bills. And we've already had several committees between the House and the Senate on, you know, trans rights and trans kids in sports, when there are really only a couple dozen in the state. I believe there are now more bills filed than there are actually trans people in the state of Missouri.
Let's talk about something everybody should be for, and that's rural broadband.
That's correct. That we got to have it. 20% of Missourians are without high-speed internet. About 60% of those 20% live in my district. And the only way we can get that done is through the electric co-ops, because the internet service providers, they can't make money.
There's places in this state that still wouldn't have power without the co-ops, isn't there?
That's correct. What we did in the 1930s is now what we're going to do in the 2030s, in the late 2020s.
Look back, every innovation that I've ever seen has driven folks from the farm, from rural Missouri, and crowded them in the representative district. This might be the first time that you can go buy a house where you want, send your kids to school you want, live that rural life you want to live, and have a good job, and maybe not make Representative Walsh district so crowded.
From the time a child is born till the time they graduate high school, the local, county, state, and federal government has invested about $600,000 of tax money in each one of those kids. So you have 10 people leave. That's a $6 million investment. You and I got to hang out at Rockbridge this summer.
Oh,
I can't tell you how many times I've been over there and I've heard people say, we used to live here. I live in Texas now. I live in Florida. I'd love to live back in the Ozarks if we could just get the rural broadband. And I was really proud of White River Electric for making that choice to do it. And they got about 25% of the funds Missouri was giving out. They're planning the rollout. And so in our district in Southwest Missouri, they're planning about 85% of their customers will have 100 speed up, 100 speed down in the next 3 to 4 years.
That's amazing.
It is
And
amazing.
it really is, changes the community more than anything else you could do.
Gives them an opportunity. If anything, COVID showed us, 80% of us can do our work from home, but you've got to have that internet to be able to do it.
Representative, I think sometimes you might enjoy hearing folks that say the government's the worst thing in the world, but the government's the only way it's going to happen, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I don't think the government is the worst thing in the world.
Some folks that
They
do,
don't-
like that
folks
rural
do.
broadband, right?
They do. They come at, everyone can get behind rural broadband. Everyone can get behind broadband. I know you mentioned my district. My district is not a wealthy district. And so we had the same issues as rural America. I think it was one thing that kind of united us was that, you know, I represent a poor district. And so we actually had children going to their local Taco Bell in our district because it had Wi-Fi access and holding class there because that was the only place they could get Wi-Fi. They couldn't afford Wi-Fi in their home. So it's great to have it available, but if it's not affordable, it doesn't matter. You can run all the pipeline you want. I'm looking forward to that being more accessible, more easily accessible, will drive down the cost. And I'm looking forward to that. And as you mentioned, you know, rural communities are suffering. They're lacking health care. They're lacking job opportunities.
One
If they
thing you're
can
not
work
lacking now is
remotely.
the Irish caucus, right?
We are not, no.
Once a
we're
month
very
here in the
good.
Capitol, it gets to be St. Patty's Day all year round, right?
Exactly. Let me see, it was the year of 2021. A personal friend of mine, Senator Mark Daly, who at the time was the head of the Oireachtas in Ireland, he had visited us at the downtown St. Patrick's Day Parade in St. Louis. And he reached out and congratulated me on my election and asked if I would head up the Missouri branch of the American Irish Legislative Caucus. So it's hopefully an
Nice.
economic opportunity, and I'm really excited.
Can't mention the Irish without a shout out to the McKenna family, especially
With that-
next month coming up.
Of course.
But with a minute left, who won the week?
Kansas City Chiefs fans.
Boy, what an awesome game. What
Great
an awesome
game.
time for Kansas City.
Great game. Great
Who won the
game.
week?
I'm gonna echo the Chiefs. I think.
There you
I
go.
think,
Hard
I
to go
think
in-
the whole state of Missouri. Actually, I'll
Amen.
say the
Hard
whole
to
state
go
of
against the
Missouri.
Chiefs at all.
We good.
But I'm gonna take one off the Chiefs. I'm gonna say the person who I would not have a television show today wouldn't be anywhere near politics without knowing Representative Mark Richardson from Poplar Bluff. He was honored this week at the Taste of the South by Senator Bean for his outstanding work as a former legislator. And I'll say a guy I used to do a little work for and kind of give me the bug of politics. Mark Richardson won the week. And to me, he wins every week. Hope you'll win next week by joining us on This Week in Missouri Politics.
This Week in Missouri Politics is sponsored by the Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, Ameren, Spire, and Sterling Bank.